Welcome to Whiteboard Wednesday, week 13. Just had round 11, disappointing game, but we look forward to the second part of the year. This is a very important time for most clubs as they lead into their week off, where they have an opportunity of reviewing the year as it's actually played out, and there'll be rooms full of coaches and fitness guys and specialists in all of the clubs, all getting their heads together in and around AFL footy at this stage, where they actually look at what their club's achieved against what their objectives were coming into the start of the season, and just where they're at and what their expectations are for the second part of the season. It's also an important time because in those reflections you can also start to map out what your strategies are from a list structure point of view as the year plays out. And this is a really important time for AFL footy, and clubs are perhaps challenged at this level more than they've ever been before, with the introduction of two new clubs over the next couple of years, where we've got a reduction in the number of accessible players through the normal channels, and so therefore there's all these clubs who are working extremely hard to look outside of the square, and we've seen the introduction of a number of mature age players coming out of the VFL situation, and even Podsy Ardley, who's recruited at 28 years of age and has shown that he's got what it takes to actually do it on the big stage as well. Obviously the introduction of players like Carmichael Hunt, Israel Folau, it's something different to what our game's ever experienced before. Our club's going down probably the more well-worn path in regard to that, and that's looking to draft great talent into our club, put in place great development structures, and very much focused on building a team dynamic which over time can stand the test of time, and give our supporters and obviously our coaches that 8 to 10 year window where you get that opportunity of really evolving the group. Just referring back to the strategy, the red and blueprint, this part of the strategy is just simply called Fielding Champion Teams. And there's three components that we look at. The first of these is, as I mentioned before, is this notion of list management. Whilst that's managed by Tim Harrington specifically, everyone's involved in it obviously. Our coaches, our recruiting guys, Barry Prendergast and Gary Burley in particular are key people in regard to that, and they give us a lot of feedback as to how the draft looks like happening and what trade opportunities that we're going to have. And Dave Dunbar also gets involved in that as part of his analysis of opposition clubs every week, and also the coaches themselves, who clearly have to coach against these players. The second part of it is just player development. We're really upping the ante in this area. And the final one is obviously team performance. And that's really focused on the things which we need to do to give ourselves best opportunity of winning on any particular week. Quite clearly, the focus for our club in the recent years has been on list management, where we've had these terrific early draft picks, but we've also found that it doesn't necessarily have to focus on choices 1 and 2 or choice 11 with Geordie Gisbert's last year, but we found with the pre-season pick to have Liam Jarrah coming through the system shows you that and as I mentioned before, guys like Barlow and Silvani are coming out of the VFL. It also shows that there's players available even later in it all. The player development, which is going to be the focus of what I'll talk about today, and obviously whilst we understand that everyone works week to week and our game's analysed week to week as part of our team performance, we're still very much focused on this phase. Whilst we've had some interesting performances this year and 4 very good wins, and perhaps we could have snuck another couple along the way, that's very much the longer term objective. I'll just refer back a little bit to this framework that we've talked about before, which is this first notion of if you're trying to create winning football as an objective, we break it into 4 elements, and these are the 4 elements which will get measured when we have our review next week. And as I said, there'll be this coming together of everyone. There'll be 30 or 40 different people who we employ on a full and part-time basis, who will all give their thoughts as to how we're tracking in regard to this. And the measurements are our performance, as in what's actually happened, so we have to get a good line on what we've actually achieved, but also this notion of what expectations are. And the expectations relate not only to how we've performed, this year and what the expectations are in regard to the immediate stuff, but it's also as it relates to what the future opportunities are, particularly when we're talking about young player groups. And one of the things which has really come out in our season so far is that we really haven't rounded out, either our week-to-week match day performances, but also the games of the various individuals who are playing for us, because they just haven't been around long enough. They're just young players. The dimensions of which we measure each of the individual players, the first one is the football skills of the player. The second one we talk about is in regard to his physical skills. We talk about the person's personal skills, their character attributes. And the final one is their game skills. And then they're obviously all tied together. And there's a little bit like the profit model, we need trade-offs in these areas. The football skills basically is an area where we have an academy, and the person who manages most of that and majority of the work or oversees it is Kelly O'Donnell in regard to his work. He's also got biomechanists and specialists and other people who work very much with him on various aspects in regard to the science of it all. So what Kelly will do, well, he'll give a rating of how each of the players are going now, and it'll be on the 1 to 7 scale that we've talked about before. He'll say, okay, where are they, and so that's that performance, where are they now in regard to what we expect of them. So if there's any gap there, on a 1 to 7 scale, and we then try to analyse. If we thought the person, should be, say, a 5 and he's only performed at a 4, well, we then try to analyse how and why that's happened. It might be fitness, it might be, lack of, lack of confidence. It's just something may have happened at some point. We also then say, okay, what do we think we can get him into the future? And because we've got such a young group, there is a lot of projections which are actually required in this area. So for instance, we may have a player who we say, okay, we're rating his performance this year. He may have got a 4 in regard to how he's actually played in any of these or what he's actually shown. And we say, okay, but he's in fact actually capable of a 5 now in regard to his maturity. We analyse that gap and then say, okay, but we think we can get him to a 6, and then we say, okay, what do we have to do to bring him up to that? And it's a fairly structured and scientific process. So Kelly manages this area here, and obviously working very closely with the match committee in regard to that.